Well, welcome to our Monday morning edition, our live edition of Healthy Living South Mississippi. Live healthy, be healthy with Doctors Jim and Janine Fox of Doctors Nutrition, located on Cowan Road in Gulfport, just south of Pass Road. It is a live show, so you are welcome to call in. 896-0713, 800-349-0713. You can ask questions about the topic of today, or if you have any other question about something maybe you've been having in the back of your mind, saying, oh, I need to call in and ask them about this next chance I get. Well, this is your chance. So here we go. Anyway, we're talking about this morning's subject is GMOs. And what is a GMO? Genetically, and I kind of joke, said genetically mutated organisms,
Well,
and you
they are
said
mutated.
that's close.
That's real
Close, yes.
I mean,
But it's
they
actually
are.
modified organisms. So what exactly is a GMO?
Well, for instance, let's take the soybean.
Okay.
They took the soybean, and Monsanto was one of the first ones to do this. And there's some other companies, Pioneer, and there's even a company here in Mississippi, Delta Pine and Land Company or something like that. They've been doing a lot of genetically modified organisms for a long time. And what they did was they inserted a gene into the soybean so that they could spray it with Roundup, which has got the glyphosate in it, and which is an herbicide. It kills plants. I mean, if you've ever used it on your driveway or something, you know it'll kill about anything you spray it on. You included if you don't careful, but just don't do that. But the thing, they actually put that gene in that soy so that they could spray it with the glyphosate and it would kill the weeds, but the soybean's fine. And so they genetically modified it, if you will, which, everybody says, well, so what's wrong with that? Well, they modified it so they could spray it with a very known toxic element. And they do. Millions of pounds of it every year are sprayed on these crops. And the soybean is right now roughly 95% of the soybeans that you get are the GMOs, about 80 to 85%. And some authors will say that that's a little bit light on the corn. Pretty much all your sugar beets. Wheat.
Squash?
No,
well,
not yet.
There was
doing some other stuff on it.
There was, I saw online there was a particular type of squash. I mean, and you can Google it. You can go on there and Google it. But yeah, I mean, it just surprised me going the different list of vegetables that this stuff has been sprayed on.
Oh, yeah.
And
Now, there's a lot of pesticides on a lot of different vegetables.
Right.
But the actual GMOs are biggest probably right now in the grains. When you look at grains in general. Now, another thing they say is real high is some of your oils. Canola oil, most of it is genetically modified.
The majority.
The majority. Cotton is highly genetically modified. So
We usually don't consume that.
Well, cottonseed oil.
But we do. Cottonseed oil. It's in everything packaged.
That's true. I've forgotten.
Look at packaged food.
Yeah.
Cottonseed oil or soybean oil is almost in everything packaged you get, which is
not
all genetically
not
modified.
only is it genetically modified, then they partially hydrogenate it, which makes trans fats. But the FDA, in all their infinite wisdom, says if it's less than 0.5 milligram per serving, then they don't have to put it on the label. But if it says hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated, okay, you're getting a trans fat that's loaded with glyphosate. Ooh, not good for your health.
Right, and with the glyphosate or Roundup, they said, oh, well, it is safe because in plants, what makes it kill the plant is there's actually a pathway.
It's called a shikimate
Pathway
Right.
that plants have, and it alters that pathway is how it kills the plant. Well, humans don't have that pathway. So that's why they say, therefore, it's safe for us. But one thing they didn't look into is our good bacteria, which we talk about so often.
Oh, yeah.
Our probiotics
Exactly.
have that pathway. So
okay.
they're actually finding that in people and in humans, the dangers come in the modification of our probiotics, which we've talked over and over and over how important probiotics are to health.
Oh yeah, because we've talked about how so many people decide, okay, they're getting sick or whatever, they jump on antibiotics.
Right.
But what they don't realize is, if you start, they take their dosage or whatever for so many weeks, or for a week. Normally it's a 5 days a week kind of thing. Well, I'm not quite over it yet, so you get another dose. Well, what you don't realize is that you're killing the good stuff whenever you're killing the bad stuff.
Right, and it,
which is why I got on the I was sick there for a while, and I finally got on the probiotic, and and it's like within a couple of weeks, noticed a big change in 30 days. Man, I was fine.
You know, the thing about it, and you brought that up about the antibiotics, and you know, a lot of people, you know, we recommend probiotics. And they say, well, do I have to take this all the time? Sure. Okay, because not only is it the antibiotics that they're taking, and I've had people all the time say, well, I haven't taken an antibiotic in a year. Do you eat? And if you eat, guess what? You're probably consuming some sort of antibiotics because they feed that beef and chicken and so on that you're eating.
Yeah.
They feed it antibiotics. And they also feed it grain that's loaded with glyphosate. Uh-oh, double whammy. You got a double whammy killing your good bacteria. And we see an awful lot. There's been a matter of fact, there's a lot of research now showing the uptick or increase in the autoimmune diseases. And you know, with the increase of these autoimmune diseases, a lot of the doctors that are study this, looking at that gut and saying, okay, how does this happen? And the mechanisms.
Well, what are you putting into your gut?
Well, yeah, or killing in your gut, right? And you're actually destroying a lot of the things that normally protect us. So yeah, so probiotics every day, sure.
And when it comes to probiotics, people don't realize there's actually 10 times the amount of beneficial bacteria, organisms in our body than we have cells.
Right, so we got about 1 trillion cells in the human body.
Right.
Give or take a few thousand. And then when you look at the probiotics or the content of your gut, the microorganisms there, somewhere around 10 to 15 trillion. Wow.
So they are that important to health. Right. And when you start looking, it's not just the immune system, which we know that the probiotics actually are about 70% of the immune system, but it's also about detoxification. And that's where you get into a lot of the problems that the Roundup is causing. And you know, it's yes, the foods we're talking about today are genetically modification, but genetically modified foods are loaded with glyphosate, a chemical that is so harmful to you.
Wow.
Into the gut bacteria.
Well, our phone number is 896-0713, 800-349-0713. If you have any questions regarding our subject this morning on genetically modified organisms, what they're good for, what can you eat, what can't you eat, what shouldn't you eat, your food choices, or anything else in particular, give us a call. We'll be right back with segment number 2. And welcome back to our Monday morning live edition of Healthy Living South Mississippi. Live healthy, be healthy with Dr. Jim and Janine Fox of Doctor's Nutrition, located on Cowan Road in Gulfport, south of Pass Road, right across the street from the old garden center of the Kmart there. We're talking about genetically modified organisms and the fact that they're in foods and you know, trying to avoid as much as you can. But I mean, for the most part, it's going to be hard to avoid them all.
It is, you know, and one of the other concerns that a lot of people have about these chemicals, you know, they get in the groundwater. You know, when you spray it on there, it soaks into the, you know, into the ground.
Right.
It's into the groundwater, so it's in our water supply. They've even found the traces of the glyphosate in rain in places like in Oregon and, you know, so just pretty much anywhere they've tested for it.
Actually, there was a study done in Mississippi that found that it was everything they tested in 75% of all samples of rain and drinking water in the state of Mississippi.
So you can't.
And I'm not sure where in Mississippi it was done because it didn't say it; just said in Mississippi. So I don't know where that was, but there's no doubt. Like I said, we're getting it from everywhere. So you know, you want to get as less as you can.
Right.
And like I said, it's probably impossible to get none. But now one place that they do know is packaged foods. They do, kind of the statistics are, well, 90 cents of every dollar spent on food in the United States is spent on packaged foods, packaged processed foods. 80% of all packaged and processed food have genetically modified organisms in them. So almost all your cereals, almost all your, I mean, anything with grains. Grains are probably the highest,
they're the highest
concentration of it.
What they're even doing now with wheat, they want to get, the farmer wants to get in there and combine his wheat early as possible, because if I get my stuff to the market before you do, I get a better price.
Right.
So now they're actually coming in, while there's still a little green left and it's not quite ready to combine, they're spraying it with the glyphosate to kill everything. And it dries up real quick, then we can combine it.
So it's basically been modified.
Well, it's been doused, if you will, doused in glyphosate.
Well, I mean, you've changed the natural process of the growth process.
Exactly.
As you said, you've sped it up through, you know, by genetically modifying it.
Probably some of the viewers out there might remember back in the late 80s, there was a problem with tryptophan, and they took it off the market for a while because there was some people that got a special type of eosinophilia or type of leukemia type thing from the tryptophan. Well, to come to find out, there was one company in Japan that made this tryptophan, and they use bacteria to degrade stuff down and make more tryptophan. They were using a genetically modified organism, a bacteria.
Wow.
And it produced all sorts of weird side effects. I mean, yes, we go in and we splice in this gene to make more tryptophan, but it also made some more stuff that we really didn't want. Those unintended consequences. You hear that political term used all the time. And so those unintended consequences caused all kind of problems. And there was one company that did that, but it actually goes back to a genetically modified bacteria that they kept modifying to make it make more of the tryptophan.
Does MSGs play a role in this anywhere?
Well, MSG in itself is bad. And
Well, I know that. That's what,
That's a whole other show.
It's an excitotoxin, which actually damages some of the cells in the brain. But it is not because it's genetically modified. So
Okay.
it's a little bit different. But
Yeah.
MSG is not good.
I mean,
but
I
it's
just
from a little bit
start thinking
different.
about talking about this genetically modified organisms, how you genetically modify food, add things to the food, talking about the tryptophan and all that. It's like, then for some reason it just pops in my mind. It popped in my head. Well, what about MSGs?
Yeah.
Well, they use that as a flavor enhancer,
Right.
to make things taste better. That really, from cardboard to something else, because most all that they're using it in is some sort of packaged processed food.
Yeah.
I mean, it's loaded in that. And all your, here on the coast, I know everybody likes to do shrimp boils and crawfish and so on. If you read the ingredients on those boils, a lot of those ingredients, or a lot of those prepackaged things, will actually contain MSG. And I mean, it's right there in bold letters.
But we can't give up our crawfish boil.
Oh, no, we don't. But you
we
came
make-
to ours
I came to
recently,
yours, yeah.
and we had an all organic crawfish boil.
And it was really
They were good,
It was
right.
awesome.
Because
with
we
no
do,
MSG.
we do actually carry an organic shrimp and crab boil.
Right.
Because we
so
are
that's
in an
something
area.
you want
yeah.
to try sometime is go by Doctor's Nutrition and get their organic crab and shrimp boil and try it. I mean,
It was really good.
Yeah, you can you do your crawfish, you can do your put your sausage in there, your corn, your potatoes, and all that, just like you would normally do. But use that crawfish boil and
No
Yeah, because
MSG.
you don't want to
Oh,
give
no
up.
MSG.
You don't want to give up your shrimp and your
No.
crawfish.
No,
and
no,
we're
no,
not
no.
saying that because
No,
it's
no.
actually
No,
good
no.
for you. It's just you got to cook it a little differently, just like anything. I mean, you actually process things differently. Now he mentioned tryptophan just a second ago, so I was going to mention something else that the genetically modified foods do and why they're so harmful to us.
Okay.
We talked about it affecting our bacteria.
right.
Our bacteria, yes, it's part of the immune system. Yes, it actually is very important there. But another thing our bacteria does is actually produce amino acids. And amino
Like
acids
tryptophan,
that
yeah.
our body has to have that we can't produce, that we have to get it either from our gut bacteria or from our food. Well, that is one thing that the glyphosate alters, is the production. Tryptophan is one of the big amino acids that it actually affects.
That's why everybody's
And
on antidepressants.
Tryptophan affects sleep, so sleep disturbances, and it affects depression. So they're even linking a lot of the increased amount of GMO foods to more depression. They're linking it to if you
Sleep problems, like
sleep
you said, yeah.
problems. I mean, they're linking it to almost anything. We have there is a researcher that's
Okay.
a professor at MIT. She is actually going to be on our radio show this week.
Right.
And she links it to almost every disease process.
And she
in
can
detail
go through
why.
it. Yeah, the details of to why and how. How does this happen? And it's pretty interesting when you think about it. And that's something that, we tell people, we always start out when somebody comes to us, one of the first things we're going to talk to them about when they say, well, I'm trying to get healthy or whatever, change your diet.
Right.
You have to change your diet.
Oh yeah.
That's imperative.
First thing that I was told. Change your diet.
Change your diet, right? And it goes into doing as much of this, organic food as you can, simply to get away from things like glyphosate. That's one of the bad boys out there.
And in changing your diet, it could be we're not talking about big time changes unless you have some big time health problem issues. but just the one that I did, the low glycemic diet. A lot of great food on there.
Well, if you get off of grains, which
Yes.
you're supposed to be, if you do that, you're getting rid of a lot of the
Okay, I
genetic.
had 2 pieces of toast while I was on vacation, and that was,
man.
But that is getting
That
rid
was
of a
it.
lot of the genetically modified organisms because grains are your biggest offenders. And like I said, that's why so much packaged processed food has
Right.
it, because so much of it has grains. So grains is a huge.
Well, honestly, I couldn't tell you the last time we had a loaf of bread in our house.
Right.
Or,
So,
or anything
so
like
just
that.
getting off of the grains helps a few things. It helps with the blood sugar issues.
Mm-hmm.
It helps with, controlling blood sugar, controlling triglycerides, helping with weight,
Yeah.
management. And at the same time, it does get you away from a lot of the genetically modified foods because so many of them are grains.
Okay.
So
896-0713, 800-349-0713. You have a question for the doctors, so please call in and we'll either put you on the air. If you don't want to be on the air, we'll just have our operator take your question and pass it along to them. We'll be back with our final segment in just a moment and this week's special. And welcome back to our final segment this morning of Doctors Nutrition's Live Healthy, Be Healthy here on our Monday morning edition of Healthy Living South Mississippi. We're talking about genetically modified organisms, GMOs, and in the foods and why they're bad for you and why you shouldn't eat them or consume them and how to avoid doing that. And as you mentioned, it's in so many things that we do eat, in the wheats that we eat, some of the a lot of the vegetables that we eat.
Yeah.
You can't, may not be able to totally avoid it, but it's, as much
you
as you
need to
can.
try,
You
right.
need to try
You need to
and do
try.
as much as you can to
You need
avoid
to
it.
make a conscious effort.
And
Yeah,
even
and again,
with-
the organics, the organic. And yes, again, whenever because like I said, first time my wife ended up having to go pick up some organic stuff for me because I switched over. She's like, oh my gosh, this is a little bit more expensive than what for the normal stuff. But in the long run, you figure, what it's going to do for you health-wise
Right.
And how,
is
how
well
much
worth
does-
the sacrifice.
How much does a health problem cost?
Exactly.
And so you have to look at that
Exactly.
too. And we're talking about, we've been talking about the grains and how bad they are and how they are one of the big offenders. But you also have to look at your proteins, your meats and stuff. If that animal is fed genetically modified corn, then you're eating genetically modified corn. So it's not just in the grains, it's also in the animals that you eat. So going organic with your meat is also important. There was actually a study in Iowa where they looked at pigs that were fed the genetically modified corn. One big thing that they're seeing affected is fertility, and everybody knows there's a lot of fertility issues. The pigs went from being 80% fertile. They would actually find that when they tried to get the pigs pregnant, 80% of the time they were successful. When they started feeding them the corn that was genetically modified, that went down to 20% of those pigs were
Wow.
fertile. Yes.
Wow.
And many of the male pigs were actually sterile. And so there's been a lot of animal studies that really.
Do you think maybe that's it can because the people doing that eating those that it can cause fertility problems in humans
Oh,
as
yeah,
well?
that's
Well,
what-
if it can in animals, I mean that's
Okay.
that's the logic, is we've looked at.
Right.
And there's just when you start looking at the male infertility, the drop in testosterone. I think
Right.
we did a show on male
Yeah, we
fertility.
talked about that.
And how the sperm counts drop, tremendously. When you start looking at all those things, then look at, so we got the low T epidemic, we've got an epidemic of cancer. I mean, the war on cancer has absolutely been lost a long time ago. Don't know why they
And
even
another
call it
thing that we've always said something out there had to be affecting was vitamin D deficiency. And they're actually starting to link some of the vitamin D deficiency that everybody's having to also this
And
use
some of the other-
the GMO foods.
And even some of the other, thing about, and this is going to be next week's show, is about minerals.
Right,
And how
and how
important they are
important
for
minerals
health.
are, yeah.
But the glyphosate actually chelates some of your beneficial minerals. So it binds to them, chelates them, gets them out of your system. So you don't get the cobalt, for instance, that
Right.
makes cobalamin or B12. Things like calcium, things, all sorts of things.
Magnesium's a big one.
Magnesium's a big one.
Right.
Manganese, magnesium,
Zinc.
all these, zinc, all these things, vital nutrients. And one of the biggies is the sulfur-containing compounds. The sulfur-containing amino acids. And the sulfur that we need. Sulfur is so important to the human body. It's just unbelievable. That's why if you smell burning flesh when you burn yourself, that's sulfur being released. There's a hydrogen sulfide gas. We're so loaded with it, and this stuff actually interferes with that sulfur pathways in our body, metabolism, etc.
There's a lot of things that it does.
Wow.
I know. You look amazed.
Well, when I started to try to do my research on the subject, it was like, whoa, this is like really in depth.
Very,
Yes, it does.
very.
So it's like you don't know where to start to write notes down or everything like that. So the top, what is GMO? That was the top. That's all I put
as far
down.
as you got, huh?
As far as I got is like what
That's
is
good enough, yeah.
because there was just so much involved in it, and like you said, they put in the plants, spraying the plants. I mean, even the testing in lab rats.
Yes.
And what it does.
Oh, yes. There's some interesting stuff going on there.
But like I said, if you want to know more information and if you're interested in this area, we are on our radio show that is tomorrow night live, Tuesday at 7 on Voice America, or you can go to our website, doctorsnutrition.com, and click on our picture and it brings you there. Or you can download it later. But we are going to have one of the authorities. She's had 18 published studies on the dangers of
She's a professor at
the
MIT.
GMOs. Yeah,
right.
she's a professor at MIT, so she is going to go into detail on how it affects the cells.
And there's no reason why you can't avoid, the foods with the GMO in it and still not eat good.
Right.
Eat
Oh, yeah.
healthy.
You can eat very well.
That's
yeah,
right.
you can still eat very, very well with, a lot of the, the great foods that are out there. I mean, one of the things, that I quit doing a long time ago is canned vegetables.
Yes.
I cut that out a long time ago.
Yeah.
And just, all fresh vegetables.
Fresh is better.
Fresh is better.
Much better.
Now,
much better.
this week, our special, we'll talk about that before the show ends.
'Cause it's about getting rid of this
It's
stuff.
about getting rid of it.
Yeah.
We have something called DN Detox, which is a 2-week detox. It's more
Kind
of
of
an
an intensive, yeah.
detox. And then we have one called liver support, detox and support, which is actually you can do every day. We take it ourselves every day. Not
Yes.
that we've ever had a liver problem, but because we live in a toxic world. And
Saying,
so, I
why
mean,
you don't have a liver problem.
exactly.
Right,
I mean,
everybody
we
knows.
live in a toxic world. So both of those products this week are on special because we are talking about chemicals and what it does to you.
And what is the importance of the detox? I mean, it just flushes the chemicals out, the bad stuff
Well,
out of you?
it helps get 'em
helps.
out.
It
right.
helps.
I don't know
okay.
that anything flushes them completely out, but I always say if you keep retoxifying, you're kind of defeating the purpose.
Right.
So we always suggest change the diet first. I mean, that's
Yeah.
always our number one thing is diet change.
And like, when you say change your diet, eat differently, there used to, we've heard, time and time again, you are what you eat. Actually, you are what you eat ate. So whatever you eat, whatever it ate, whether it be plant or animal, that's what you are.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just goes down the line.
It does.
It's like the big domino thing.
Yeah.
Start the little bitty one and push it, and everything dominoes down from it. It really does.
And again, that's why, it's good to, look at eating things like we were talking about out there, organic eggs.
Organic.
Organic eggs.
Pay the extra price to get that,
Yeah.
that organic egg.
I switched to organic milk
Yep.
Exactly.
because, I love milk.
Yeah, and the hormones are real high in milk. I mean, even organic milk has a little bit higher hormones because of the way they do the dairy cows, but it's better than the regular milk.
Better than
Right,
the regular.
right.
So you just you have to
And
look
when
at
I drank the regular milk, I was always drinking the 2%. I thought I was doing well, but then you said if you're going to
We
go
need
with
the
organic
fats.
milk, go with the organic milk, just do whole milk.
We need the fats.
Yeah. So definitely have, and the first time I bought some, I thought, oh, this is going to be awful. It's really, really good.
It don't
It's
taste
milk.
any different.
I
Now,
know.
there's a lot of research out there that'll say, oh, organic's no different nutritionally. That's probably true.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily that it's more nutritious. It actually is what it's lacking, and that is the chemicals, the pesticides, the antibiotics,
Right.
and the hormones.
Herbicides, right.
So, I mean, that's actually, it's what it's lacking. It's not what it's added. So it
Yeah,
tastes the same.
You're
Right.
paying for what you're not getting.
Not getting, exactly.
Which is a good thing.
Right.
Well, thank you for being here with us this morning. If you have any questions, you can go by and see the doctors. They are there Monday through Thursday at Doctors Nutrition's offices. They're located on Cowan Road in Gulfport, just south of Pass Road. Great thing about it, you don't need an appointment, and consultations are absolutely free. Where can you? Can't
go
get any
wrong?
better service, exactly. And we will be back next week, same time, talking about importance of minerals. This show will be rebroadcast this coming Friday on WLOX CBS.